I've said many times before that congruency is king, and there are lots of incongruencies in this little video.
I was looking out of the window and he slaps my face.
She said, and then he slaps my face.
Hi there, I'm Eric Hunley and welcome to my channel. On this channel I like to explore human behavior and what makes people tick. Now today, following up another video that we had with Lena Cisco, and I believe you'll find it here, if I did that right, I have Gavin Stone doing a statement analysis on Amber Heard. We've already done the body language on her testimony with Lena Cisco. Now Gavin's giving it a shot with statement analysis. So stay tuned to the end and I'll tell you about an upcoming live stream.
So what the problem is with this one is this is what I call one of the most powerful forms of lying. This is where they tell several truths and they wrap a lie within those truths. So there's kind of a little bit of confabulation going on sometimes, and maybe a little bit of fabrication. But when it's all mixed in, it makes it really difficult for somebody to be able to spot deception in those instances. So what happens is when she explains at the very beginning what's going on with while she's waiting on the aeroplane, she's talking about a conversation from the day before.
I had conversations and felt encouraged that I could continue on with the plan, which was for me to get on the plane, go to Boston, pick him up, and we would go back to LA for his daughter's birthday.
There's a real big intake of breath as she said a big piece, and then she remembers what she wanted to say, this kind of script by the looks of it that she's been told what to say by her legal advisors, and then continues with it.
He was so upset with me on that conversation, but
there's a micro expression of disgust with a little bit of squint and an eye flutter going on with regards to the conversation that she said they'd had the day before.
I figured I assumed he had passed out and that he would have been kind of sobered up.
And then there's this nod of approval and this eyebrow raise towards the people she's talking to, the jury, I'm assuming it is. If they're kind of believing her. Her blink rate throughout this entire thing is up and down, it's all over the place, and sometimes very high in stressful situations. There is a micro expression of anger, which is again, I think, in relation to what had happened the day before, where she said, you know, he assumed he was no longer mad at her because he'd sent the jet.
So I assumed he's not that mad at me.
And there was this lip compression, and you can see that there's this kind of, like she's holding back on what she was going to say there. There's another micro expression of anger because of the fact that, in my opinion, and this is purely speculation, she said that she'd been waiting in the jet a long time. I reckon her anger was getting fueled at the fact that she'd been kept waiting. I believe she's probably the kind of person that doesn't like to be kept waiting and was probably getting more and more frustrated with every minute that went by.
And I get on the plane, it touches down and the SUV pulls up and it sits on the tarmac for a very long time. He knows I'm on the plane waiting for him. I'm sitting on the plane for a very long time waiting for him.
And kind of doesn't say that she was getting annoyed, but it kind of, if you read into it and read between the lines a little bit, it certainly appears that way. She then goes on to give this one-sided shoulder shrug when she's talking about the fact that she didn't realise how attuned she'd become to the changes in Johnny.
I didn't realize at the time I had already become really sensitive to these little changes.
And how she'd noticed how these slight little changes had become so obvious and apparent to her, and she could tell when he was intoxicated quite easily. Again, I think that is something that is very incongruent with what's really happening. If somebody asks you something that you don't know, and they'll say, you know, what do you know about astrophysics? You say, I know nothing about astrophysics. If you shrug when you do that, it's congruent because you know nothing. You know nothing, so you kind of, you know, I know nothing about it. If somebody asks you something that you know something very well, and you give a shrug as your answer, it's an incongruent little bit of body language. She says something that I found really interesting when she's talking about him getting onto the plane. She said, you know, he got onto the plane, and she followed up with, he's got these sunglasses on.
He comes straight up to me, doesn't say anything to me, but is looking at me. He's got these glasses on, and
I didn't quite get that. You know, he's got these sunglasses on. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing that you would say. You know, you normally say he was wearing his sunglasses. He'd got his sunglasses on. Not he's got these sunglasses on in present tense. It didn't for some reason add up with what was going on in the explanation at the time. So I don't know what she meant by that. I'd certainly like to dig deeper and find out there. And then she goes on from saying he aggressively took his sunglasses off when he sat down, didn't sit in the usual seat. There's a lot of information that is missing. She talks about his questions and starts saying that he's asking questions like, tell me about your day yesterday, what did you do yesterday?
He's asking me what's wrong with me, what do I have? Do I have something to tell him? Do I have something to tell him? You want to talk to me about your day yesterday? And then it gets,
She does say that he started off by saying things like, what's wrong? And she said, and it gets, and there's an unfinished sentence and a big pause and a stutter, and I think she was going to say something, realised that it could have looked bad, and then decides to move on.
I already know that he's drunk. I already know he's using, he reeks of weed and alcohol. I mean, his breath smelled so bad, and I could...
Said that she knows he was drunk and using, and again goes on to paint this bad picture of him probably hoping to win over the sympathy of the people in the room and the public. If she said something that in statement analysis we look at,
I was trying to be polite.
I was trying to be polite. Well, for anybody who doesn't know anything about statement analysis, you don't try to be polite. You're either not polite or you are polite. It's one or the other. It's a bit like when somebody says, I tried to call you. Well, what happened? Did you miss? And I had to laugh after she's talking about how he was apparently derogatory to her.
To being really explicit about my body. You know, he was talking about he was saying really disgusting things.
And she's looking at the jury and she said, and he looked at me and he said, really disgusting things. And it's almost like she'd ran out of things in her mind to make up that were going to be that, you know, kind of horrific to say to the jury. So she just said really disgusting things. As she does it, she's got this kind of slight tongue bob going on that she does, very, very slight at the point of saying it. This is where everything changes. Because now we've gone from everything to being past tense. I was on the jet, I was waiting for Johnny, this happened, that happened, to present tense. This happens several times as this tense shift changes. She was talking about the fact that she moved chairs or moved seats on the plane several times, and that each time she did, Johnny came to sit next to her. I believe that's probably true.
I don't know how many times I moved seats. I wish I did. I don't. I remember moving more than once. And Johnny came to me each time, not the other way around.
And as she's told it, she's kept congruent, and body language as being very kind of consistent. But then
I was looking out of the window and he slaps my face.
She said, and then he slaps my face. And a tense change again, not slapped, slaps. There's this pause, this big breath, and this constant eye fix on the jury as she's doing it. And then she goes on to say,
and it didn't hurt my face. It just felt embarrassed.
For the second time, I was embarrassed. So again, no feelings of fear, no feelings, no emotions, no anything that really would be that would be congruent with this kind of story. You know, saying I was afraid, I didn't know what to do, I felt terrified, I wanted to get off the plane, I wanted to get out of there. None of that. And at the same time, she was crying with no tears, which again, you know, I'm sure anybody can figure out that if you're crying and there's no tears, it's not necessarily real. Moves on very, very quick with no feelings mentioned to say, I got up. Not saying if she responded, not saying if she said anything, not saying if she did anything or reacted in any way. She changed from I got up, I get up to as I get up. Tense changes happen there.
I got up to move again and he's just taunting me, having a laugh, screaming, and then just straight up mean, calling me names. And it was oscillating between those things. And I get up slowly again, and I just resolve to just sit the rest of the time up at the front of the plane. And as I get up...
So again, it's almost like she's going from kind of telling a story to adding in a little bit to telling a story again. She goes on then to say, I feel this boot in my back.
I just turn to him, and I feel this boot in my back.
Now, I've been attacked several times. I've been hit in the back several times when I've been unexpectedly attacked. So I know from experience that I didn't know whether it was a boot or a bat or a punch or a knife or what it was. I know it was hit me with that much force. It was surprising. Still couldn't tell you. It could have been a knee, could have been a fist. To say that she felt the boot in the back, unless he's got really, really, really big and specifically shaped feet. There's this long pause, and then she says, "He just kicked me in the back." Now again, the word "just" there doesn't add up. It doesn't work in statement analysis. The word "just" is very specific language. It doesn't seem to fit with that conversation. There is another long pause, and then again we get this repetition of "I fell to the floor, I caught myself on the floor."
I fell to the floor, I caught myself on the floor.
This is something, again, in statement analysis, if something's repeated, it's very sensitive, and there's something going on. I mean, obviously, falling to the floor after just being kicked is sensitive, but I reckon there's definitely some withheld information there. Follows that with, "I was embarrassed again."
And I just remember feeling so embarrassed. I felt so embarrassed.
Not said she was worried, not said she was concerned, not said she was in fear. A load of missing emotions there, which I'm really, really concerned about why she's not explaining her feelings at this point. So there's many incongruent actions with this. There's lots of tense changes. There's lots of crying without tears. There's lots of story and explanations with missing emotions or nothing there about feelings. The only thing she mentions is the fact that she's embarrassed several times. At no point does she say that she was in fear, that she was frightened, she was terrified. She doesn't say that she looked to anybody else for help. She doesn't give any kind of emotional account of what happened to her. So that's one of my major concerns. And the biggest concern out of everything from the entire video, there's about 10 minutes of video, not once in that video for the entire flight and her account of what happened does she say that she said anything. Apparently, according to her and her kind of statement, she said nothing the entire flight. So she's moved seats, he's come in, he's took his glasses off, he's conversed with her, he's taunted her, he's teased her, he's kicked her, and apparently throughout this entire flight, all this has happened and she said nothing. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot of missing information. I reckon they've had an argument the night before, it hasn't been resolved, they're both still in a bad place. He still had a drink and under the influence from what happened the night before. She's still wound up and wound herself even more after being kept waiting. They've got on the jet. There's a lot of tension in the air and it's just an ongoing row. I reckon it's a very volatile relationship and it's probably something that this ongoing argument has continued. She's just only said her side of the story to try and paint Johnny in a bad light. Hopefully that helps, and yeah, this is just my opinion from the video you sent me. I haven't seen any of the others or baselined her, but from what I can see from that video, that's what I took from it. So.
Wow, wasn't that fantastic? Gavin really has some great information, as well as Lena Cisco. And good news, you want to subscribe to this channel because we have an upcoming live stream with both Gavin Stone and Lena Cisco where they will answer your questions. So please subscribe now, stay tuned. It's coming tomorrow. Thank you so much, and I'll see you then.